Whether it's a trip to the Sydney Opera House or eating out, millions of Australians could soon have more money to burn after a visit from the taxman. The economy has been sluggish in recent years, and the government is trying to give it a boost by reducing income taxes.
Obviously, in the context of wanting to build a stronger and more resilient economy, lower income taxes for all hardworking Australians are very important.
The measures will be introduced over the next decade, but for the majority of wage earners, relief is imminent. About 10 million people who earn less than $88,500 per year are eligible for a tax refund of up to $760. The next phase starts in 2022. The heftiest taxes will apply to people who make at least $84,000 instead of the current threshold of $63,000. And in 2024, the top tax bracket of 37% will be scrapped altogether.
We went to this election on the platform of ensuring that Australians keep more of what they earn. And our duty in this parliament is to ensure that we keep faith with those Australians who work hard, for those businesses who invest to create those jobs, with those Australians who each and every day go about their business.
The government insists the tax breaks won't drain its coffers because it expects to increase revenue collection as economic growth rises. But some analysts say these reforms will reduce income tax collections by as much as $212 billion over the next 10 years. And if growth slows further, this gap could widen. For now, though, most people are just glad they get to keep more of their earnings. Mobin Nasir, TRT World.
Let's get more now from Australian journalist Simon Cullen. He has been following the story and joins us live from London. Hi, Simon. What's behind these tax cuts? Why does the government say this is necessary?
Well, essentially, as Scott Morrison, the Australian Prime Minister, said in that clip there, he said this is about delivering on an election promise. The centre-right coalition government went to the last election promising tax relief. They won that election. They therefore have a mandate to follow through and provide those tax cuts. And it boils down to their ideology on this. They believe, as Scott Morrison had said, that the hardworking individual worker should reap the benefits, or should reap more of the benefits of that work. It also wants to address the issue of so-called bracket creep. This is where a worker's income rises through inflationary pay rises every year, but those tax brackets remain steady and those thresholds remain steady. And so just by virtue of the fact of getting an annual pay rise, some workers are finding themselves paying more tax because of those tax brackets. So these tax cuts are designed to also address that issue of bracket creep. But it does boil down to ideology. The centre-right coalition has said repeatedly that it wants to provide tax relief because individuals know best how to spend their money. And in many respects, it's the same sort of argument we hear from the Republicans in America, and that is that its governments should empower the individual to spend their own money, and by doing so, that would be the driver of economic growth. So it's an ideological argument, but it's also an election mandate.
So how much can the average person who will be affected by this tax cut, how much can they expect to save or get back in taxes?
That's a very complex question because, as that report said, this is going to be phased in 3 different parts. So, for example, the first phase, it does benefit mostly lower and middle income earners. That takes effect immediately, and that will give several $100s back to the average worker each year in tax cuts. As you can imagine, that part was not controversial. Phase 2 and Phase 3 are the more controversial elements. So Phase 2 more targets those middle income earners and higher income earners. Now, initially, the centre-left parties balked at supporting this, but after being defeated at the last election, they agreed to support it. Phase 3 is the most controversial element. That's the one that costs the bulk of this package. So this package costs about 150 billion Australian dollars, which is about 111 US billion dollars. And this third phase, which starts in 2024-25, is about 2/3 of that cost. And so it's worth pointing out that this is still a long way off. But if you want to look at the average, well, let's say someone earning 100,000 Australian dollars, which is 70,000 US dollars, From this year, their tax benefit is $900. From 2023, so that's phase 2, the benefit jumps to $1,600. And from 2025, so phase 3, it's $3,000. So you can see that the tax changes, the tax plan really does ramp up a lot in those later phases if you're earning good money. But it's also worth pointing out that there is an election between now and that phase 3. And if the centre-left party wins that election, they have said that they reserve the right to repeal stage 3 of this tax plan and potentially undo it. So while the government has had this win today, it's certainly not the end of the debate.
All right, we will have to wait and see. Journalist Simon Cullen, thank you for joining us.